5:30.
Yeah, 5:30?
But that's fine, I mean,
Let me sign
I
that.
have 5:29.
there's only,
My laptop says.
You have what?
Mine was
I have 5:29.
oh, I have 5:30.
Let me write these.
Pretty thin.
Awesome. I gotta start tomorrow, so I want to start tomorrow. Bless you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep, thanks.
You say?
IT guy. You just asked if we were ready for the sound, yeah.
We're ready. You ready?
Ready.
All right. I'd like to open up this meeting of the Board of Public Works scheduled for Monday, November 20th at 5:30. Would Diane please call the roll?
Mayor Donchis is absent. Commissioner Bergeron,
Present?
Commissioner Pappas,
Here.
Commissioner Moriarty will be in around 6 p.m. Commissioner Ackerman,
Here?
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works meeting of October 26, 2017.
Second the motion?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Please come up. Please state your name and address for the record.
It takes a little bit for this 86-year-old tush to move around. But I'm here tonight because I'm complaining about the last storm. I'm Lou Kaminsky. I live at 13 Massachusetts Drive. I've been there since 1972, but one of the good people at the Public Works told me during the storm that there was a post and a tree in front of my house that was causing the problem. I've lived there all those years. There's never been a post or a tree in my front lawn. Anyhow, the trouble all the time, and I think if you look at the history of the area, it's all underground. But the problem is up there on Taylor Street, across from the country club, and from Mass Drive to Taylor, that intersection, to probably a block on the right-hand side is where the leaves always hit those wires. And it happens in the wintertime. I can't tell you how many times that has been blocked off. And, but this time, it was just a windstorm, and I didn't get power till Thursday. And I had 2 nights with no heat, and finally I decided to go to a friend's house. And Joe at Public Works did call me. I think it was on Thursday, but I was in bad shape. I had just come out of the hospital. And when my friend came to the street trying to get through to get my medication, they gave them a very hard time. So I have no love for the Public Works Department right now. And finally, there was some man that was working there that took my friend out of the area because she couldn't find, you know, it's a very confusing area down there if you don't know where you're going, you know. And so I called the mayor's office. I called everybody. And I think you passed some kind of a motion a few months ago about having somebody to answer consumers' calls. And it was hard getting into Public Works. I was really a pain. I'm telling you, I was a pain in the tush. But I was sick, been in a hospital, and I needed some answers. And I certainly did not get it, not from the mayor's office, not from Public Works, except Joe did call me later on. It took a while, you know, but by that time, I was back getting pretty well settled, you know? And I'm sorry I didn't answer his phone calls, but this can't be go on, because it keeps going on. And right now, they say Eversource won't let you trim the trees, but why do we have to put up with this every year? And it's only a small, small area. And you go over there right now, I request you all to drive down that Taylor Street before Mass Drive, between Mass Drive and the Country Club, and you'll see those limbs hanging over those wires right now today. And so at the first snowfall, it's going to happen again. And probably it's not up to Public Works to trim the trees, but they use those people when things are down. I think last year they even had a group from Canada come in to fix it. It was so bad. And I don't know why this can't be addressed. I'm really a little bit ticked, as you can see. So I hope you all address it and do something before the snow flaws, because it's going to happen again. Thank you.
Commissioner Pappas?
I did speak with Mrs. Kaminsky, and I certainly felt her pain. I'm from a street that has frequent power outages, and there are just a few of us who are on that particular grid. And as someone who actually, it really took a lot to get something changed on the street to make it better. And I think the city has more resources to take on Eversource than private citizens do. We now have a emergency management person who does a really good job. And I think that it's more than just one person who runs the department. We do have resources within Public Works. And we also have a city attorney's office. And I do think part of our job is public safety. And since we switched from public service to Eversource, I think they have cut down on people. I will tell you the issue I had a similar issue where we couldn't get them to cut back the trees. But the other issue was we had, where our electricity was connected for this very small area, it was from the 1920s. And I had, each and every time we used to call the public utility, the answer was, you have power back. And my response was, I assure you I wouldn't be on the phone with you calling from a cold, dark house if I had electricity. And things on my street got so bad that we had to have a neighbor, literally had to stand in front of a power truck. Someone went back. It was a guy from out of town. Again, you have people coming from Canada all over the country. And he had never seen such a thing because the infrastructure in place was from the 20s. And we aren't on their grid. So I understand that the city could easily say this is a power problem. But as someone who, it took me, and I'm someone who doesn't go away, clearly. People here know me pretty well. I don't go away.
We hear that you're coming back for 4 years.
So when we finally got this person to go try to fix this infrastructure that we had in place that was there from the early 20s, the gentleman almost got electrocuted. And as much as we wanted power, we certainly didn't want it so much as to cause someone to lose their life. So I actually didn't rely on the city. At the time, I think we might have had I don't believe that we had an emergency management person in place at the time. And I kept calling. My calls kept not getting returned. I sent letters in, and then finally, I think it took, and I think I even called the Public Utilities Commission, and it took a certified letter to the Public Utilities Commission, the power company, and the governor's office before the infrastructure was changed. Because, and I did put in the letter that I would have no problem, I would certainly follow up. Should anyone get killed trying to restore power on our street, that I would follow up with these letters. And it shouldn't take that. And I do understand that the city could easily say, well, you know, it's really not our job to get that done for Mrs. Kaminsky. But I do think that we have better resources in place. And, you know, certainly, if someone has some life-saving medication they have to get to, someone should be able to get back to their house. And as I said, I think our emergency management director does a very good job, and I think that he works in tandem with our division. But I think that these sorts of incidences should be answered directly following the storm with, you know, from the mayor's, with cooperation from the mayor's office, whatever our division, whatever resources our division can offer. And also, I think emergency management, I know when we have emergencies, they're like there on the spot. But they've got a lot of downtime too. I know they have education time, and I think that items like this should be followed up on. One storm in a different spot, we had there were more people that had lost power. There was a fire. The National Fire Department got dispatched. That's why we didn't have power for 6 or 7 days. It was in the summer, so you had a different, but at least it wasn't life-threatening. And nobody knew. There was no, so there was no connection from the Nashua Fire Department to the public service. I always say public service because that is who used to be in place. But I do think that when we have problem areas like this, I think that the city ought to assist residents, because otherwise it is like David going against Goliath. Try to get a call back from those people. It's not easy. Thank you.
Let the record show that Commissioner Kevin Moriarty joined us at 5:45, and I would fail to mention that also sitting with us is Director of Public Works Lisa Foto and the Administrative Assistant Diane Thibodeau. So Commissioner, we were just at public comment, and we've just done roll call minutes, approval of the minutes, public comment.
May I add one thing?
Absolutely.
Commissioner? Mrs. Kaminsky, if anything like this, hopefully this never happens again, but if you ever have an emergency, you should call 911. There were a lot of wires that were down. No, okay, but that is an option, because fire and police are prepared to help anybody who needs medication or is cold or.
So bad, calling that number, calling, and no answer. When we passed I think we had a budget and somebody that was supposed to be there answering calls all the time. And I just didn't call once.
Okay.
I was really a pain.
Okay, that didn't get back to me. I'm sorry that you didn't, I'll look into that. We do have somebody on the agenda tonight that we're going to hopefully have a new public relations administrator, but we do answer our phones, and we do pride ourselves with customers, so.
A couple times, but I was in a medical situation.
Right. But you shouldn't hesitate to call 911 if you do have a medical situation, because they will get to you, and, you know, I want you to at least know that. There were a lot of wires down in this storm, and, yeah. Well, I'll call Eversource and let them know that, and ask them if they could. We can't trim the trees that are near the wires, but I'll certainly make that suggestion to Eversource for you, and see if we can get something done.
And again,
Great.
Okay?
my suggestion in dealing with them is just whatever you send it in writing.
Happy to do that.
Great. Any other comments? Seeing none, next on the agenda is letter Or number 5, Larry Boudreau, Human Resources Director, and we're discussing the DPW hiring process. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Shall I just sort of launch into this?
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Is this working?
Yes.
Thank you. I had the privilege of, someone made me aware of the fact that there were some concerns that were voiced at your last meeting concerning initially the lack of information about a CDL license for an applicant, and then there was some further discussion about the process of hiring people. Director Photo asked me to review that information and see if I could help, and I hope I can help, and I'm glad to do that, because one of Human Resources' functions is to help facilitate throughout the city the hiring of people, and it's one of the most important things we do. We have some people who've worked here for 50 years, so just imagine, once upon a time, somebody 50 years ago made one of these hiring decisions, and they're still here. They're longer than marriages sometimes. So the first thing we tackled, and I apologize, although I must say I hadn't really looked at it until I saw you speaking that night. We can't just add what kind of driver's license do you have to the broad-based employment application form. The EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidelines on the things that you can acquire about during the hire process have, during the course of my career, just got more and more and more constrained. But we did finally figure out that AppleTrack, the electronic system, is more flexible than any of us had dug into and understood before. And late last week, if people apply for 3 categories of jobs, service maintenance is the one that I'm thinking of first, I think it will cover all of the AVSME jobs at least, and it will now ask specifically, do you have a CDL license? So finally, simply, that should be completely tackled. Also, I think there's a heads up, and we've agreed with Diane Thibodeau and the superintendents that if for some reason we don't know that, they'll try to make that clear to you in the introductory process. Commissioner,
Was that all you had on the licensing or not? I don't want to interrupt you if you have more to say.
that's all I have on the initial information about did they have a CDL, yes or no.
Okay.
But then I have quite a bit about the background checks. And because I watched the video and I understood some of your concerns about driver's records, et cetera.
Okay.
So-
All right, great. So, all right, then I won't interrupt you,
I'll
sorry.
keep going, if
All
I
right,
may.
keep going.
and then-
Thank you.
Well, you can interrupt any time.
Thanks.
So in this day and age, everywhere I've worked, most employers that I know of, and the other areas within the city, now do what's called a conditional offer of employment. And so what you do is you learn as much as you can about a candidate without learning about some of the pieces of information about which people have usually used to discriminate against others. So when I was a kid and I filled out an employment application, it had my birth date on it. Birth dates have been gone for years and years because you have no reason to need to know how old somebody is. In some jobs, you have to be at least 18, and you can ask that question, are you at least 18? But if you're between 18 and 100, you don't need that information. And so the EEOC said years ago, if you don't need the information, don't ask. And so following that piece of logic is why the practice has become, and it's what the city's been doing, I believe, for years, is making a conditional offer of employment. So it would say, Mr. Boudreau, we'd like you to be the HR director, contingent upon, in my case, a criminal record check, a driver's record check, and a credit check. So what they've said is they've pretty much considered whether this person would be a good applicant, and then they're going to do those final checks. And so in my memo to you, I suggest that we bring it to that stage of the process, and I'll talk about the public, non-public in a moment, but that we change the motions that this board makes, not necessarily starting tonight. We've made it this far without problems, but I would suggest that we change the motions, and in the future, you would make a motion that says to approve the selection contingent upon the acceptable results of criminal and driving records checks and a pre-employment drug test. And that phrase would be new. And Commissioner Pappas?
I'm sorry, and because I do want to ask, because usually it's the end of the road when we're here. So that's why I don't mean the end of the road as far as their employment.
Yeah.
But usually, they have been the selected applicant. And you don't think that, that it would be possible for that information to be had before they're put in front of us? Because we do, I mean, a lot of our people have, even if they don't have a CDL, if they're driving city vehicles, and if we have someone who's had 3 speeding, if before the end of the process, the director, the superintendents, the assistant director, who's ever looking at these folks, I think that would be good. I would rather that happen in that process if you narrow it down to the last 2 or 3. A lot of our situations, we do have people who work within the division, but someone from outside of the division, you know, if they're not driving a city vehicle, I don't think that it's that important. But I think for a good portion of our jobs, they are driving city vehicles.
So I agree wholeheartedly, and you'll find buried in this memo somewhere that I couldn't agree with you more, that we want to make sure that the people who join the Division of Public Works and are driving vehicles have safe driving records. The question is, can we have a process here, as we do in other areas, that works for you? And I suggest we could do the following. That you make a job offer contingent upon acceptable driving records check. Let's just talk about driving record now. And we produce an offer letter, the people signs forms, we get that record check from the Department of Safety, Larry Budrow, HR director, looks at it. Looked at hundreds for many years. Most of the time, there's not much there. Sometimes there is. And then I make a reasoned judgment. And I say, oh, this record looks a little dicey. I don't want to sit here and take this responsibility. And if someone had 1 speeding ticket 15 years ago, then I would look at that and say, this probably does not warrant another non-public session with the Board of Public Works to review this person's candidacy. He was a good candidate for all other reasons, had a speeding ticket 15 years ago. If they've had a series of violations through the course of time, if the violations have been recent, I understand that the fire department uses the measure, do they have 3 points against their license at the current time? Then I would suggest we would come back to the Board of Public Works at the next meeting. To your question, if I could just go 1 second further. We have to go through this conditional offer process. So we can't go to the 3 best people and say, we'd like you to do a driver's record check. We've got to make that initial decision, and then you would have to vote a second time to do it correctly. And I submit that if you were to do that for every applicant, for nearly all of whom it would be unnecessary, practically, then you're going to extend it too long, and you're going to have people waiting another month to get the job, and that is a practical problem, because lots of times you need these people. And also, the AFSCME contract has a 30-day from date of posting requirement, which would have to be, you know, we'd have to go to AFSCME and ask for a waiver of that.
So the process would be that it's vetted through the director and appropriate staff, and then in yourself, and then we would approve a conditional based on those conditions.
Correct.
And that we would approve it. So then within the next, like, week or so, or whatever time it just would take you to do the background work, that at that point, it would be approved by this board, and then you'd be able to just hire them. In the event that there was an issue that you felt the board should know, then you obviously could pull it, or no, hold the offer until such time that it would come back to the board.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
And those checks, too, just to be clear, are approved, not by the division, but by HR. They all go through HR.
Yeah, so it would be faster to do it that way, basically,
Right.
because that. And then in the 2 years, I thought I saw in the memo that you said in the 2 years, you've only had one seasonal person that was a problem, basically.
Right. One person we actually did not employ.
Right. Because I'm sorry, I'm raising my own hand. So, because anybody that you're hiring knows upfront that these background checks are going to be done, including the driving record, if they're applying for a job that would require these licenses.
Yes.
Right, so,
Yes.
I mean, I find that in my business. If I say to somebody, we're going to be doing a full credit check for their apartment rental, at some point, sometimes people say, oh, okay, great, thank you, and they're out because they know that wouldn't work. So if somebody had numerous violations and knew that, they would not probably have applied. But anyways, Commissioner Pappas?
2 questions. Number one, what would one have to do to get 3 points? Like, if I got one speeding ticket?
I have no idea. I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Because before, I mean, what I would like to, I mean, I don't know how other people feel, but I feel as if before we say, sure, go ahead, I'd like to know what we're agreeing to if we say 3 points.
I would suggest we don't go with 3 points, that we start out, and it's easy enough for Director Photo to pop in and take a look at these driving records. I could show her every driving record that has anything on it for the next several months. I would suggest that I understand completely. I've been doing this for a long time. I was the assistant town administrator in Derry for a decade. We don't want to put people in equipment of this size in this city of Nashua with a poor driving record. My suggestion is try this. Know that we're looking at those all the time. We don't just file them. We look at them. We would act upon them. And I can have Director Photo look over my shoulder. And if someone has a driving record that I think would cause some alarm or make the members of the board curious, then we can come. And that could happen a few times over the next year, perhaps, if there are driving records, and then you could say, well, no, here's kind of the feeling of what we think is tolerable, and this is what raises our concerns.
Commissioner Pappas?
I don't know how other people feel, but I would really like to understand what that means. What it means to have 3 points, or what the issue is. It's interesting, I want to say it was the first year or 2 on my board. That didn't have anything to do with driving records, but it was before anyone here was around in the capacities they are now. We had a situation where in wastewater, I don't know who's, it was, again, it was not, none of the people involved, but we were almost out of money. We kept approving change orders. And it's no offense to you, but when someone says, trust me, we'll follow up on that.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, we really looked like a bunch of doofus. You weren't on the board, Kevin, yet, so I wouldn't call you a doof. So we really looked like a bunch of doofuses that, oh yeah, we'll approve this change order. We'll approve this change order. And we were essentially, it was, we were close to, writing checks that there was very little money left. So it's nothing against you, it's nothing against anyone. it would be my druthers to really not only understand that policy, but also to take advantage of this and to really say, how are we going to follow up on employees that are already here, that exist? And, what if Joe Smith from the street department has had 4 speeding tickets that we're not aware of? I guess I don't understand the follow-up on that. And it's no offense to anyone, but having that situation under my belt the first year or two I was kind of in office, it wasn't, I don't think that anyone purposely does anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think at a certain point, we face the voters. And I just feel as if the more information we have regarding stuff like that, the better. I mean, you can't say an oops if something, if we have, whether it's somewhat a new hire or, and this is much better than what we had before, whether it's a new hire or whether someone who's been working here for years that has has racked up a bunch of tickets we're not aware of. I just would like to take this opportunity to, I think the more information for this board, the better.
Right. Director Photo?
The only problem that Director Budrow has brought to my attention is that in order to do and correct me if I'm wrong, that in order to do the background check, we need to make a conditional offer, which is done by this board. So, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we would have to wait. It would take us basically
Right.
2 months to hire somebody, and we would lose candidates at that point. So that would, so I don't know
Right,
how we.
no, I understand that, but rather than to say, well, we can do the conditional offer and say, us take a look, it's hard when you say, okay, and then you forget to follow up on it.
Well,
So in other words, I'm not really getting, well, if it raises your concern about the license, I'm not getting a qualified, I'm not going to say qualified, I'm not getting a quantitative answer to that. And also, I also would like to understand how we keep our handle on drivers we have now, whether it be someone who drives the big rigs, but also people who are driving around in, we're self-insured, and even if it's just a pickup truck they drive. And so I'm trying to take this opportunity to take advantage so that we can really be the ones to follow up, because it's hard to say a big oops. I mean, that was a pretty big oops my first year or two on the board, and I'm trying not to have that oops again. And,
Who's not the director, by the way.
No, that,
Allowed
I was
as well.
very clear that there's no one was around. No, I was quite.
We're looking-
you were
we're
nowhere
looking
near-
down here who was
nowhere near the
around.
city, I made very clear. And I even said even Kevin wasn't, even Commissioner Moriarty wasn't around then. So, no, I mean, and I was the only one that looked like the doofus here in this room now, but, so, and it's not even about looking like this, and I do say that kiddingly, but it's not even about looking like a doofus. It's really kind of about following up, and I think the more people that are aware and follow up, I think the better protected we are.
Mr. Boudreau?
Thank you. I have a suggestion that may address sort of everybody's needs, and that is, why don't we continue doing essentially what we've been doing, which is the offers that have been made here have turned into a conditional offer letter. We've gotten those results. The people have been hired. That was happening in the background. If someone had an egregious record, in one case we didn't hire them. We could start sending the driver's record checks to the board for review at a subsequent non-public meeting. Now, in this suggestion, we will have still already have hired these people. But what you could do is you could get a flavor and take a look at these record checks over the course of a few months and learn about them, and you could alter, if you thought that the decisions that were by administration, you need to be reassured by them, you could look at the driving record checks in non-public. It would be some extra work, and my guess is you would, as a board, you might tire of it after a while, but it might be a good opportunity to satisfy some of the curiosity and concern that you rightfully bring to your role as commissioner.
Can I ask a question about that?
Mhm.
Can I send those to the commissioners through email, or do we have to have a separate meeting to review them?
They could be sent through email. You'd have to be very careful about talking about, you'd have to make sure you understand the rules about
Right.
meetings and not meetings, but they could be sent through email. But you can't have discussion about them. I guess I'm not a spur-of-the-moment expert on non-public meetings.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure.
I mean, it has to be on the agenda when when you're having a non-public meeting, but do you want to go through the rest of this?
Yes, I
This
would.
memo, and
Can-
is that all right?
Can
and
I ask
circle
the
back,
one,
or-
the one question I have?
Commissioner Pappas?
The one question I have left is, do we have a system on following up on folks who, and again, this isn't just CDL drivers, I think that when we are a division where pretty much everyone has, like, a lot of people are driving even pickup trucks, and the city is self-insured. Do we have something in place now that we follow up on employees' license records? No,
We do have, what we do have is random drug and alcohol testing, according to the federal policy, and our risk management department administers that. And there's a 2 strikes policy, so you get a second chance here in the city if you,
And that,
If you what?
if you are under the influence of either a drug or alcohol, you get a second chance. And they're put through a treatment program, I believe.
yeah, and I don't
I don't know if you can speak more to
That's
that,
certainly
Director Budrow,
an
but-
HR question, but I don't think you could just randomly, or a legal question, randomly just pull people's driver's records for,
I don't
without their
think so.
without their
But
permission.
that would be a question for legal.
But if that's, if you, I'm sorry. But if they're driving our vehicles, we're insuring the vehicles.
Right, but that's not, that's not public knowledge. Like, I
Yes.
couldn't just pull somebody's driver's record. That's probably a question maybe for legal.
Well, you can't pull my driving record, but you're not paying for the insurance on my.
No, I
on my-
understand, but even an employee, there's
I-
still some.
I would really like to see us, rather than just approve this, I would really like to see further look into this and maybe have you work on it with legal, because I would just like to take this opportunity, because snow flies, we get busy, and then all of a sudden spring happens and we get busy. And this, I think that this is really important, and I think if you drive a city vehicle as part of your employment, I would just like to grab this opportunity to be able to have, the people in place, both, you and perhaps the legal department, to try to figure this out, because you can't pull someone's, I would agree, you can't pull someone's license and take a look at it, but if you're the employer and they're driving around in your vehicle, I would think that you have a lot, I would think that that's a total different situation than if I want to be a nosy person and see if Paul Bergeron has been careening around the city on 2 wheels.
No, I understand, but I believe that has to be signed off on and authorized by somebody to have their driver's record pulled. But can we go through the memo? Because I think you answered some of the questions. Can we circle back and just go, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Moriarty, I'm
Move
sorry.
on. If I could just make a comment. Mr. Budrow, you mentioned the fire department has a policy of the 3-point, and they're disqualified as far as their license as the applicant. But it sounds like with the division, it's kind of up to your review to see if it falls within an area. So I think what Commissioner Pappas is trying to get to is something, do we have something in concrete? Okay, if they have this, they're disqualified, or is it a gray area?
I I haven't seen enough bad driving records to consider myself an expert. It seems to me that most of the time when people present themselves with CDL driver's licenses, that they're professional drivers and it's their stock in trade. And so frankly, most of the driver's records I've seen that showed anything, they go back to late teens. And so, if we're hiring someone who is an adult and they had a few infractions when they were late teens, and they weren't drunk driving, but they were like speeding, a couple of times I've talked to folks and said, so tell me what's gone on for the last few years. I think there is some gray a little bit because it's, in my mind, even someone who had 3 points. I would say that certainly, I don't know actually that the commission, I had a quick conversation with the fire chiefs and the library director in preparation for this meeting, understanding how the other boards are working the conditional offers. I don't know that they have a black and white rule, or if that's just the threshold at which Chief Gallipo brings it forward. Right? The library director, the chiefs are also utilizing some level of discretion. The board is expecting them to come to the board and say, we've interviewed these candidates, we did the background checks, we think they're fine. If they don't think they're fine, then they meet with the commissions and talk about it. I think I would ask respectfully that we consider the situation with current employees perhaps at another time, and that we really try to address primarily what I was prepared to today, which is the hiring process. And I think that making those available as they come, and beginning to do that with the next group of hires, making them available to you so that they are non-public documents, and you take a look at them, and it'll give the entire board some opportunity to say, oh, this is something we'd like to learn more about, and maybe make some rules. That's my best suggestion as to how to react, to give you the information that you want without slowing the current process.
Commissioner Ackerman had his hand up, and then we'll go to
Just a
Commissioner
very
Pappas.
Very quick question, Mr. Vajo. In the second page of your memo, top of the line, and I know we're focusing on the license, but that's fine, and the driving record, rather. But in regards to criminal record check and/or pre-employment drug test, is there a zero tolerance for those two items that you highlight here as part of the hiring process? Or is that subjective as well?
Pre-employment drug test, 0 tolerance.
0 tolerance.
Criminal record, subjective.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Commissioner Pappas?
And this is one more question about the license. So if you check someone's CDL, does that also include their regular license?
Yes, so someone with the CDL really doesn't have a regular license anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
May I continue?
Absolutely. Mr. Boudreau?
So in paying more attention to this than I ever had before, I stumbled across and spent some time with attorneys Bolton and Clark, and I suggest that the board makes a bit of a wholesale change in how they process the new hires beginning after tonight, and for a couple of reasons. First, the applications, employment applications really should not be considered public documents and really should not be posted on the web. They're documents which other employers in the legal department believe should be protected by 91A3. And similarly, the actions of hiring public employees are something that should be done in non-public session. And so I've tried to lay out in this, and also included Attorney Bolton's memo, I think, to another board earlier in the year about non-publics. But I've tried to lay out a process by which I would suggest that in the future, I would suggest and legal would suggest, that the applications be provided to you separately. When I wrote the letter, I thought that you were receiving information by email. And if that were the case, the suggestion was that you simply get the application forms under separate cover, and when you were done acting upon that matter, you delete them. So they're not public records, and you don't want to have them on the web. So you would move to go into non-public session. You would make a motion similar to one that I gave you, which was specific, like your motions are now in non-public. I move to hire Larry Budrow contingent upon this and that. You would vote on that. You would come out of non-public. You would vote to seal the minutes. You would then, the chair could inform the public about the matter, because there's really no need to cloak it in secrecy. People wonder why there's non-public. You'd say, today we approved a conditional selection of a Mason pipe layer. You just wouldn't say the person's name. And you could also, so that you could free yourself of the confusing, troublesome business of figuring out when to seal and unseal minutes, you could at that very time make a motion to unseal the minutes contingent upon hiring. So the board itself could be all done. They wouldn't have to go look back at any point at sealing or unsealing. That would turn it back to the administrator's responsibility, if that makes sense. So you go into non-public session, make the motion, come back out, vote to seal the minutes. Chair can inform the public as to what just happened, and then vote to unseal the minutes following the person's date of hire. And that way the public has the right to know as soon as the person's hired who it was, if someone was so interested. And if it was of concern to the board, you could, in a subsequent meeting, you could reveal the identity. Everybody has the right to know the identity of every employee here. But protecting the privacy of applicants until the point that they are an employee is something that we should be more concerned about as we go forth.
Commissioner Pappas?
I think we do it different than other boards. It's pretty much done before. I can't recall not approving someone that the board put forward. Yeah, I'm sorry, that the department put forward.
I understand that.
So this is the way the education department does it?
I didn't check with the school.
Okay.
It is. I confirmed that with Kim Kleiner.
This is, I'm sorry. Do you want to go?
No, I just want to make sure, because I think, and I'm going to blurt it right out, I think as an employer board, we're probably the weakest employer board, because we don't elect our own chair. By charter, the mayor is the chair. And you know, as I said, we aren't, I think I can't recall not approving someone that we've already, that it's pretty much a done deal. People knew, and people know that it's going to go to our board.
May I?
Absolutely. Mr. Boudreau?
The issue on the table, though, is that when you are approving somebody, you are actually approving them contingent upon the results of those 3 checks. And so if they failed those 3 checks, then what we have inadvertently done is we've said to the world at large, Larry Budrow failed his pre-employment drug test.
Okay.
That's not a matter really to be public. That's a matter between the city and the employee or the candidate, and they should be able to walk quietly away.
Okay, I understand that.
And I understand exactly what you're saying, but I just say luck has sort of been with you. And because it sounds like every selection that was made, that may well be a testament to the administration, the selections that have made stuck. But the first time that one didn't, you would have violated somebody's privacy in a manner that could be actionable.
Yeah, this is I always hate to keep referring back to the county, but this is the exact system that we use, and we're the employer board for Hillsborough County, and we pretty much go into non-public every meeting for, sometimes it's as little as 5 or 10 minutes, but I think some of the concerns that the board may have or questions you have, what's nice about being in the non-public is that you can ask it. I think sometimes at our board, we've had things that come up, and I've almost felt like we should be discussing it more, but it's been a public meeting where, you know, we're skirting that line of the person's names right out there, and, you know, so I think that we have a one-page process to go into non-public, so it's like, and I just happen to be the clerk, and so there's only 3 people on the board, so the lowest rung is the clerk. So the clerk, like in this case, you could probably say going forward, whoever the vice chair is will do the minutes, and we have a standard form, and it's handed to me when we go into non-public, and we do, you know, all the procedures here that Attorney Bolton has. It's the exact, basically same procedure, so I'm sure that's done on other employment boards, and we go right down the line, we check the box, exactly like Mr. Boudreau said, and then we make a motion to seal or not seal, and then we come right out of non-public. But gives you a little more authority, because you're correct, that by the time it got to us, basically, it's been properly vetted through the staff, and, you know, we generally get the story, but we never really had an opportunity to maybe ask some of the additional questions that we have. And in this case, you could. And then offer the conditional employment. So certainly it can be tweaked, but this is pretty much exactly the way we do it at the county level. And we do go into non-public, which is nothing wrong with going into non-public as long as it's properly documented. Commissioner Moriarty?
Mr. Boudreau, just another comment. I don't want to stray too far from the topic, but during our previous mayoral administration, we would have grievance hearings in public. And would you care to comment on that, whether that is the way we can continue going or not?
I think that requires a situational analysis. So, for example, if it's a grievance hearing about a pay practice governed by the contract, and a member of the union believes that these are the facts, and I don't believe I got paid appropriately, and if that grievant wants to bring that to the board, I think that's fine for public discussion. I think that if a grievant has a disciplinary issue, then the tendency should be to expect that it's going to be non-public. Although I do, in the back of my mind, there's something in the law that says if the grievant were to insist that it be a public meeting, I think the board probably acquiesces. I'm remembering the part of 93. But I think that grievances having to do with any behavior-related issues or performance or discipline or a termination grievance, I would suggest that be non-public. I think that things as straight interpretations of a pay question are fine to be in public.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other additional questions for Mr. Boudreau? We do have this. I don't really require a motion, so I'm not sure what the will of the board would be.
No.
Commissioner
Yes. Thank you, Mr.
Ackerman?
Chair. I think a lot of work has gone into developing this, and I think it's a nice stopgap measure, because I think it's going to protect the city of Nashua, protect the board, and I think maybe what we ought to do is put this on file, take it as a topic at next month's meeting to vote on it, if that's the will of the board here tonight, and take this and not make us be a difficult way of onboarding somebody within the city of Nashua, because I do think that this brings a lot of credibility to the process, and I do think that as we move forward to Commissioner Pappas's point of view, if there's other questions regarding other questions on CDL, we take that up, you know, over the next 6 months. Just might be a nice way to proceed.
It's
Mr.
my
Boudreau.
pleasure to attend these meetings on a regular basis or upon request. If I can be of any help, if you want me to go into a first non-public with you or anything I can do to helpful, because I am genuinely trying to help you be, all of us, successful.
Okay, great. Any additional comments? Good. All right. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I'm going to leave the room. Thanks a lot.
Great.
Good night.
I don't really, this was more of an informational, so it really doesn't require us to accept or approve, and that we would take it up next month per Commissioner Ackerman's comments.
Okay, so we'll put it back on the agenda next.
Put it back on the agenda for next month, and then certainly if anybody has emails or questions, they can be directed towards the, Mr. Boudreau, or certainly the director.
Can,
Commissioner Pappas?
would anyone mind if we did it for a couple months? Because I would like to see how it works, and I really do want us to figure out, even people who don't have CDLs, who do drive our city vehicles, how we might follow up on that.
So getting the background checks after the conditional
Not back,
offer, you mean?
not back, but just every so often, whether it be every 4 years, you get your license renewed. I just feel like we have a lot of city vehicles, and even if someone isn't driving a CDL, if there is if part of their employment, whether they're driving a car or a pickup truck, I think it's fair to, I think it's only fair for the citizens of Nashua that we're able to figure out how to check on that.
Okay, so,
So, I mean, I don't know how other
What do
people
you
feel,
want?
if we can put it off like maybe 2 or 3,
I'm not opposed to that, Commissioner. I just don't think it's on the agenda, and I think it should be on the agenda, like Commissioner Bergeron has suggested for next month, and then we can vote on that. I would just stay to the agenda, would be my suggestion, but.
Yeah, I would agree. I would add it on the agenda for next month, and those questions as well. Doesn't mean that the board has to adopt it, but I think as far as some of the things that Mr. Boudreau said, as far as the offering the conditional employment, some of these we probably should be acting on sooner than later, just based on what he said as far as we actually were hiring people, or saying we were hiring people when it was conditional.
So for the January agenda, can you put on that current employees who have a regular license as a condition of their employment, how we can follow up on getting a hold of their driving records?
so, just, I'm not sure I understand, just to be clear. So what you'd like us to do is to, the candidate would come to the board in non-public, have a conditional offer, and then when we did the background checks, then we would get you the background checks?
I'm looking for current
No,
employees.
two separate things.
Okay, all
Two
right.
separate
You're
things.
talking
It's
about,
totally right.
So you're talking
Because
about the
I'm
current
just using this as
employees,
an opportunity.
current
to say,
employees.
yeah, I mean, I've seen some pretty lousy driving through the city.
I
and-
will ask that question to legal, and
Yeah.
I will have an answer for
Yeah.
you next
So
meeting.
next,
Yeah, okay.
next month,
I'll-
we would
Yes.
take up this memo and certainly any
Okay.
additional questions that we'd have, because that's the point of not taking it
Right.
up today, is I'm
Right.
sure we'll have additional questions. Mr. Boudreau can come back next month, and then the other part is a separate piece that the new board can handle in January.
Well, I mean, if they could better yet, if they can get it done before next month, that would be great, too.
Okay,
Great,
I will ask that question.
all right.
Thank you.
So if there's no additional questions, we'll move off to the engineering department. Under letter A, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the selection of Timothy Foley of Milford, New Hampshire, to the position of auto mechanic 2, second-class shift at the street department. Starting salary is $24.
We're actually at we're at
Oh.
Engineering.
It just seems, okay. To approve the residential commercial wastewater service permits and fees as submitted.
Second the motion?
A motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under letter B,
I'll move to accept and place on file the update of the 2017 paving program.
Second the motion?
and that's made and seconded. That's informational. Does anybody have any questions in regard to that? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the 2017 paving program update signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under the Street Department, letter A, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the selection of Timothy Foley of Milford, New Hampshire, to the position of auto mechanic 2, second class, second shift at the street department. Starting salary for this position will be $24.49 per hour. Funding will be through Department 161 Street Fund, General Account Classification 51, Salary and Wages.
Second motion?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Mr. Foley here? No?
He's not here.
No, okay. Great. Under Parks and Rec, under letter A, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the proposed recreation structure fee for 2018.
Second motion?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Superintendent, you gonna come up and discuss?
Nick Caggiano, Park and Rec Superintendent. As you may recall, we were asked quite a while ago to look into fees that we currently charge and propose new fees to offset expenses and to enhance some of the programs that we put out. We found that we haven't increased our fee structure for recreational activities in over 15 years. We've studied fees in other communities for like services and facilities, and I've attached a proposal, that memo for you, with our recommendations, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, the public garden plot seems like a very modest. There's no increase there that you're recommending there, correct? Or is there?
The increase would be to go to $30 from $20 to $30.
$10 increase.
$10 increase.
Oh, was that on a different page? It's not.
Do you have the chart,
I think
Commissioner Ackerman?
there's a summary page.
There's a summary page that is helpful,
Okay,
yeah.
Not a problem. Thank you. And under the Greeley Park band shell fee, currently there's no fee to use the band shell. How many different organizations use it in the past calendar year?
Many. There's two classifications, if you want to break it down. There's summer fun activities, which obviously we sponsor and we wouldn't charge. But we have a lot of requests for walkathons, church events, all kinds of things. And currently, we absorb all those costs. People use the stage. We have to put staff there, open things up, close things up. And we're just looking to cover our costs. We're not looking at this as a money-making or a revenue generation thing, but just to cover our cost. And we thought it would be a great way to take those funds and add them to the summer fund account, and that way we could put out better programming, not more, but better quality programming.
Is there, and thank you for that. Now, when you say many, is that more than 20? Or just,
Oh, yes.
okay, more than 20?
Yes, I would say there is 71 summer fun events, roughly 70 events that fall in the summer fun calendar. And I would venture, without having it right in front of me, there'd be somewhere around 40 additional events where people request the use of the stage.
So this could bring in considerable money to the summer fund account.
Right.
And no consideration for nonprofits or anything, waiving fees or any process?
A lot of the nonprofits, Commissioner, are with the walkathons, and they generate tremendous amounts of revenue. They'll do a walk for a certain cancer or medical condition, and they'll generate $25,000 on a walk, and we just want to cover our cost.
Do you think the $375 fee would cover your costs entirely?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
I sat with the director, and we went over this, and we kind of figured it out. There were different ways to do it per employee, and we thought a one fee would be a way to go.
Commissioner Pappas?
We had this discussion a bit ago, and I thought former alderman had said that we had to set up some certain fund if we wanted to do that. It would require legislation. That's what Alderman Dean had said.
Right.
When I had brought this up before about charging a fee for the band shell.
I don't believe so. I can check with
mean,
our financial manager, Carolyn O'Connor.
I mean, trust me, I've been,
Yeah.
because
We'll do what we need to have the right
The-
fund in place.
the other two questions that I have is that we let out-of-town people use this a lot. And I guess it covers our costs. But in addition to covering costs, for the real big ones, right, I think that there could be some help managing pedestrians crossing some of the busy streets. Like, it's an issue. And I do notice, it seems to be up to the different charities. Some charities are much better than others at helping people cross the street. Because if you have a bunch of cars that park right at the edges of streets, and it's hard for, cars are trying to edge out of different streets off of Concord Street, and then you have, the cars are trying to look for that in order to they have parked cars they can't see beyond, they're trying to nose out, and then you have people walking in front of the cars, it creates an issue. Like, it is a real safety issue, and the example I gave, and this must have been before 2010, because that's the year my mom passed away, but I had remembered we had this huge walk in Nashua, and it was so, but it was so difficult to get out, and I thought, geez, you almost wanted to go back to go home, and then there were so many cars, there were so many people. I drove into Manchester, they had as big of a walk, if not bigger, and they had police officers directing, stopping traffic, stopping cars, letting pedestrians go, or else stopping pedestrians to let the cars go. And I do think that we should, that we might take a look at, before we approve this, to perhaps, if we know how many people are going to go beyond a certain number of people, if we could require the folks to hire, say, an off-duty police officer to direct traffic. I know Mayor Lozo didn't want to do that because she was concerned about retirement costs and what it would cost the folks in Nashua. But I think that these large walkathons are terrific, but I think that it can be managed well. For example, nobody manages a large crowd better than your department. When we have the Fairy Tale Festival, there's tons of people, but you have the barrels out so that people don't park too close, so that people who actually happen to be stuck out on Concord Street, and at least you have some vision for the cars. But when you're injecting that many cars into a tight street and that many walkers at the same time, it really does become a safety issue. So I don't know if there are strict and fast rules as to, if you have X number of people, this is what we need to help with the traffic.
There is. We don't make that decision because that's not our expertise. So whenever a party wants to have an event, they fill out a facility reservation form. And that form is sent to the city clerk, who distributes it to police, fire, health if food's involved, and risk management. And all those departments have to sign off on the event. So sometimes if the event's large, the police will require that the party have a certain number of officers there. So it's vetted through that facility reservation form through the different departments in the city.
They might want to retake a look at, I think we've had events there that they really should have a little bit more a little bit more traffic direction.
We have had, and I agree with you, Commissioner Pappas, it's been a challenge getting details. The police department's down officers, and they're incredibly busy. I know it's been a struggle to even try to get them for our paving program. So,
Oh, because I have seen people from I remember seeing an officer from Merrimack. I thought,
Yes.
why they, okay.
yes.
Yeah, sometimes sheriffs, the Hillsborough County sheriffs will show up
They
as
do
well.
details,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hillsborough County.
The chief and the section officers, the deputy chiefs, they look at it and sign off on it, and they determine what the requirements are.
You might let them know, no offense, but I think that they've been a little bit short on that, but I don't, or whether we have more staff on, because, as I said, we do an absolutely fabulous job having those barrels there so that people can't park.
On the edges.
That is, that's a huge help.
I'm always concerned about raising fees, to be perfectly honest with you. But I do agree that, you know, all these folks, a lot of folks are just using that and the time and staff, and I know not even for that, we're just other events this weekend, you know, the Stroll's a very big event, but certainly I'm sure there's a lot of time, effort, labor by Public Works. Rightly so, that's what we do.
Quite a bit.
That's what we do, and it's a city event. But anyways, that being said, I'm concerned, I just want to be sure that Nashua-based, and I did see that you said the 3 high schools don't pay Babe Ruth, American Legion, Silver Knights to charge $1,000 a game, that goes into home and events.
Yeah.
The colleges would pay, would have an increase,
A little bit of an increase, correct.
a little bit of an increase. And then, so is there any difference between a nonprofit from in Nashua versus one that would be based out of town, or is that too hard to,
For renting a ball field?
for anything, basically?
The nonprofits, we never charge. Special Olympics come in, they have a tournament. That's not what we charge for. What you'll see is we want to start charging some of the adult leagues. We want to start charging the out-of-town AAU groups that play softball,
Absolutely,
and baseball. They all come here because Nashua's one of the very, very few towns that doesn't, we're the only town that doesn't charge. So why would you want to play in Merrimack where you're going to have to pay a fee if you could come down here and have it for free?
So they,
So
I'm
Cal Ripken, Little League, there wouldn't be a
so they can
charge.
currently, they're coming and they let you know they're coming, and there's a, you know,
They apply
they're
for a
permitted, they apply for the permit, but there's zero fee.
Correct.
Even if it's an out-of-town group that are coming in. And we've talked about this, about the fatigue on, the field, so. But again, my only concern is any Nashua-based people. I don't want to kind of double tax some of our own, and it sounds like you've done that. I did have one question. Could you actually explain what the Jackman Fund is?
Sure. The Jackman Fund is a trust account set up by the Jackmans, probably in the early 1900s, and there's several of them. Some are associated with the library, some are associated, this one with Greeley Park. And a set amount of money was put into the account, and we're allowed to use the interest off that money for facility upgrades, maintenance, things like that there. We're not allowed to use it for payroll or for the purchase of a vehicle. You'd be able to buy a piece of equipment with using it. So the tennis courts that recently were rehabbed last May at the park, those were paid for through the Jackman Fund. So it's a nice little rainy day fund that we can use for things. It'd be nice to be able to funnel some funds into that.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under the Holman Stadium field fees that you proposed in your memo here, you indicate there's no current fees to the local high schools.
Correct.
In this proposal, are we now, if assuming we pass this, would we now charge the local schools? No.
No, there would be no fee for the 3 high schools to play at home.
And when somebody from the community fills out a reservation form that you indicated, and it gets vetted appropriately and gets sent to the city clerk's office, where does this how do they make payment? I want to make sure that we don't have a situation where there's a cash box in the Parks and Rec office, and I'm sure there isn't, but I'm just wanted to hear it.
No, all our cash and checks are deposited on a daily basis, according to the guidelines, the procurement guidelines that we have. And then most of these payments you're going to find are going to be made electronically through that new software that I showed you that we rolled out in the spring, which is going to make this possible because the software, when you apply for the permit, is going to give you an invoice. It's not going to require the office staff to send out invoice. You're automatically going to be invoiced. And I think we can set up parameters that you're going to get that invoice every 15 days, 30 days until it's paid.
Any additional? Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes, Superintendent, I would just like to commend you and your staff for this work. Very, very nicely done, and it's overdue, and I think it's going to be a big help.
And it's time sensitive as well because in order to start this, we really have to be ready to go January
Right.
1, because the first week of January is when everybody wants their permits because they want to beat the other group, you know.
So we've had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Under letter B, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the selection of Mr. Roy Lovering of Nashua, New Hampshire to the position of Groundsman 1 at the Parks and Recreation Department. The starting salary for the position will be $21 per hour. Funding is through Department 177, Parks and Recreation Fund, General Account Classification 51, Salary and Wages.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under letter C,
I'll move to accept the retirement of Rusty Gagné effective November 24th, 2017.
Second?
motion and second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
So
We thank Mr. Gagné for his service to the city of Nashua.
So I noticed, I don't know if so I noticed probably one of our longest last names seems to be different. Did Kelly?
Yes,
Alpen-
Kelly was married, got married about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so she has a different last name now.
Easier to spell.
Yeah.
But can we-
DeSimone.
Can we, say again?
DeSimone.
Okay, I would have said Simone, but okay. But we'll still be able to get her at the same email address, or will it
Right
come back?
now, what IT does when you change your name is either one will work for a period
Okay.
of time, and it gives you a correction, and then it'll.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Under the wastewater department, under letter A, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the user warrants as presented.
Second?
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under letter B,
I'll move to approve the contract award for construction phase services at the SCADA Upgrades Project to Weston and Sampson of contract to Electrical Installations, Inc. of Marlborough, New Hampshire, for the amount of $59,480.
Second?
Funding will be through department, that's okay, 169 waste, how are we going to pay for it? Wastewater fund wharf activity, SCADA upgrades.
that big spender Ackerman, he's
Put it
just,
on- put it on his tab.
Second the motion.
usually that's what they call me. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under letter C, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve change order to the HVAC upgrades contract with Monadnock Building Company in the amount of $54,099.10. Funding will be through Department 169 wastewater fund, wastewater activity, AC, air conditioning handling.
Second the motion.
A motion and second, any discussion? Commissioner Ackerman?
I thought we were done with the HVAC activity over at the wastewater. Did I miss it?
Not quite.
Hi, Noelle Osborne, Plant Operations Supervisor, Wastewater. The HVAC upgrade is ongoing. It started in the spring and has carried through. We're expecting it to be hopefully completed by spring, but there's a fair amount of work that goes into it. This is the first change order for the project. A couple of existing items that were discovered when ceilings were torn out and such, so.
We do have heat, though.
Oh, yes, we have heat. It is quite warm over there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any further discussion by the commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that motion carries. Under administration, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the selection of Lauren Byers of Nashua, New Hampshire to the position of Public Relations Administrator. Starting salary would be $54,325 per year. Funding through Departments 160 Admin and Engineering, Solid Waste, Wastewater, Funds, General, Solid Waste, and Wastewater, Account Classification 51, Salary and Wages.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Lauren is here with us.
Lauren still wants to work here after our
Yeah,
long...
after this meeting. I'm
I-
hoping she still does. I just, can I say just a few, I know we've.
Director photo.
But I'm very excited that when we saw Lauren's application, she has tremendous experience. She has a communications degree, she has a master's degree in education. She's worked for the Red Cross in communications, currently works, and I'm not going to mention everything, but just a few highlights. She works for the school department now as basically communications for the school. She does their Facebook page and all of that, and has a great sense of humor, has a lot of energy, and she brings a lot to Public Works, so we're very excited to have her. So,
Well, that's pretty good. I think I'll buy the house from it. I mean, I think I'll... Any other further discussion? Commissioner Ackerman?
No, I knew Miss Byers when she was at the high school, and she did a great job over there. The kids all loved her, so if she can deal with those kids, I'm sure she can deal with the public.
yes.
How soon in the position, what's the, is there a transition period at all?
There will be, and I'm not sure, we haven't really
Fair
flushed
enough.
that completely out, but
Okay.
I know that she's talking with, I think, the principal, just so that we don't leave the school in a lurch either, so. We're happy to have her, but it's going to be a big loss for them, so we want them to be able to have a transition period, so,
Well, and everybody watches us, so they know now, right?
yeah.
Great. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Seeing none, all those in favor of the hiring of Lauren Byers signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Under letter B, do we have a motion?
I'll move to
Oh, I'm sorry. I usually always lose my place, and I'm trying to rush because there's another meeting coming behind us.
Oh, you're right,
Make
okay.
it
All right.
And I can hear him in the hallway.
I'll move to approve the selection
apologies.
of David Boucher of Mount Vernon, New Hampshire, to the position of Superintendent of Wastewater. Starting salary for the position will be $94,842 per year. Funding is through Department 169 Wastewater Fund, Wastewater Account Classification 51, Salary and Wages.
I'm going to ask Dave to come up. Sorry, I didn't make Lauren, but this is, we've,
Do you want a second first?
oh, go ahead.
No, do you?
Yes.
you-
Well, I mean,
Yep,
you
sorry.
probably would ask the chair.
I'm
I mean, give me,
jumping the
you
gun.
know.
There is a meeting here at 7
Second the
o'clock.
motion.
That's why I'm like trying to.
Motion and second.
I'm
Any
gonna see.
discussion?
I won't make you say anything, Dave, but, it's been a long time that we've been looking. And I think we've really found the right person now. I think that this is a great fit for Dave. I think this is a great fit for Nashua. Dave comes to us with a tremendous amount of experience, and I know we discussed this in non-public, so you already know, but just for the public to know, Dave has experience in inspections as an operator, in pre-treatment, in the lab. He's touched really all of wastewater, so we're fortunate to have a candidate of his caliber, and I'm very excited about this, and I know that he's going to be great help in moving the plant forward, because as we all know, wastewater is the city's most important asset, so.
You don't know it until it doesn't work.
Exactly, so, and I'm confident Dave will keep it running.
I was unable to attend the meeting, but I did talk to the director the next day, and she said how excited that the commissioners were about your hire. And to be honest with you, it was really gnawing on me. My term was going to end, and we wouldn't have hired a superintendent over at the wastewater treatment plant. So I'm really excited for you to come on board here. So, any
And
further comments?
Just one other thing, so Dave will be starting the first of the year, so he's
Great.
got to wrap things up in Milford, and then he'll be starting, so, just so you all know the timeline.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Any further comments by the commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor of the hiring of Mr. Boucher of Mount Vernon, New Hampshire, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, and the motion carries under letter, I'm sorry, jeez. I gotta.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm going to skip the director's report. If you have to skip the director's report.
Do you want me to skip it?
Yeah,
Okay.
if people are outside, it's kind of just.
Okay. I'll save it for next month if you want, or I'll email, you want me to email it to you?
Yeah.
You know what? Wait and see, if you're too busy next month in December, just use the
What's-
same one.
What's the will
Just
of
put in
the,
pictures from South.
what is the will of the board as far as the director's report?
Sorry.
You want her to,
I'm fine for putting on hold.
That's fine, unless there's something immediate, imminently urgent.
I just
Is-
want to say something about Noel real fast.
oh, yeah, no, we're going to do commissioners' comments.
Just maybe a couple of really quick things, just that, that the landfill will be closed, of course, on Thanksgiving, and Thursday's trash will be picked up on Friday, and Friday's trash on Saturday. That's important.
And Friday.
There'll be extended hours, too, for soft yard waste, a drop-off on Saturday, November 25th, from 8 to 4. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention is that, that's important, is that we will schedule a meeting to discuss the work schedule and the permit fees for wastewater. I know that you were interested, so that we will schedule that as well.
Great. Commissioner Pappas?
I know that we got a bunch of people outside, but it has been a long time since we've had a superintendent, and I know a lot of people stepped up. But I think Nicole Osborne has really stood up.
Noel.
Noel.
I said Noel. Did I say Nicole instead of Noel? I always.
You said Nicole, and I always call her Noella, and so I actually wrote her name down correctly, so I would have it right.
I did have a kid in school once named Nicole. I'm so embarrassed. I really am so embarrassed. I am so embarrassed. But no one has stepped up to the plate and really has done so with a terrific attitude, a smile on your face, and I'm just very, very proud of the work, and it's very obvious what a great job you do for the city, and thank you.
Agreed.
Any other commissioners' comments? I'll, too, would like to thank you for your service, because you have done a great job for us. I do want to say I'm sorry.
Not going anywhere.
I saw, Noella, and I'm, right, I always call you by the wrong name. And I'm sorry I missed the recycle poster contest. It was the first year that I didn't make it, but I had another meeting, I was unable to make it. And then I just want to wish all our Public Works staff, the whole team, a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks so much for all your work. And I know with the stroll this week, there's a lot of work that's going to be done, but your work doesn't go unnoticed by folks. So just thank you, everybody, and thanks, happy Thanksgiving to everybody on my second to the last meeting as the commission.
All right. Move to adjourn.
All those in
Oh,
favor?
I'm sorry.
Second.
We don't need a second. That's Commissioner Moriarty's thing. I was trying to do it, I was trying to once do it right for him. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at